Hello, Miss Karan Johnson.
Hello.
It's a pleasure having you here today
My pleasure.
to talk about an issue that is very pressing in today's workforce, and also to talk about some of the services that the Department of Labor provides. Okay, again, it's a pleasure having you. My name is Rosalina Royal, aka Winsome Ashley. Articlemotion.com. First question I'm going to ask you, just give me a brief highlight of some of the issues that are very pressing in today's workforce.
Well, it seemed to me, I've been working in the Department of Labor for the past 4 months, and we take phone calls on a daily basis of employees who are not getting paid at all, are not getting the right wages, are not getting paid their overtime. And I got a lot of questions on FMLA, Family Leave Medical Act. People want to know how they're authorized, how they get it, and they have questions when their employers violate the act. So we take care of them.
Now, what are some of the services that the Department of Labor provides, or some of the core services?
Some of the core services is we enforce the minimum wage, which is $7.25 for the federal, and New Jersey has a higher minimum wage than we do. Theirs is $8.38. We also make sure that employees are paid time and a half overtime for any time they work over 40 hours. And also child labor and farm labor and H-1B, which is non-immigrant workers. So as long as you're working and you're I'm not getting paid correctly, we're the people to call.
Thank you. What is the Fair Standing Labor Act?
Well, the Fair Standing Labor Act of 1938 ensures that every person that works is paid fairly and is paid on time. Basically, our motto is a fair day's pay for a fair day's work.
I see. And in terms of hours work and hours pay, can you elaborate on that terms for me?
Yes. The Department of Labor does not regulate how many hours per day you work. What we do regulate is how many hours per week you work. If you work over 40 hours per week, you're entitled to be paid time and a half overtime, not straight time, time and a half. Also, we also make sure that you're paid minimum wage. There are the minimum wage for the federal minimum wage is $7.25, and for anyone that works in the service industry, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, their minimum wage is actually $2.13. It's only $2.13 because they get paid a tip. And at the end of the day, if the tip does not add up to $7.25, their employer have to make up the difference. So we make sure that happens.
Okay, and thank you for that. And what about the workers, like student workers, for example? How should they be paid?
Student workers are actually paid $4.25 minimum wage. Now that is only the minimum wage. Your employer can pay as much as they want. But the minimum they can pay is only $4.25. And for young workers, the age is actually 20 and below. 20 years old and below.
Oh, I see. Thank you for that. And what's the minimum wage? And in terms of state and federal, suppose the state requires a higher minimum wage than the federal. What happens in that case?
Well, the federal office can only enforce the $7.25 minimum wage, and New Jersey Department of Labor will enforce the $8.38. But if you go over 40 hours, we would enforce at time and a half the higher minimum wage. So, but we will never tell your employer they have to pay you the minimum wage. We'll just call them and say, hey, this employee didn't get paid. You need to pay them.
Okay. And can you define a little more, or elaborate on a little more? Elaborate on a little more about employers' responsibilities in terms of paying their employee wages.
Well, the employer's responsibility is to make sure that their employees is paid correctly and paid on time. I get a lot of phone calls 2, 3, 4 weeks later that employer hasn't paid them, and they're getting excuses that it's in the mail, it's coming. There is no excuse. Our motto is a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. You work your 8 hours, you need to get paid your 8 hours, and the employer has to do it. It's the law.
What about overtime? Can you?
Overtime, that's our biggest violation. Employers seem to think that their employees are not paying attention, so they pay them straight time for overtime. That is against the law. You work over 40 hours, not 80, not over 80 hours, over 40 hours in a work week. You're authorized to be paid time and a half overtime, and that's it. Not 80 hours, not 120, 40 hours. That's a good question that I get a lot too, because most people get paid every 2 weeks, and they will do, like, say for instance 44 hours one week and 36 hours the next week, which combines to 80 hours, and their employer will only pay them straight time. That is incorrect. You do that 44 hours you work that 1 week, you're entitled to time and a half, even though for those 2 weeks it adds up to 80 hours.
Okay. What about non-exempt? Who are the non-exempt workers?
Non-exempt workers is pretty much the everyday Joe. If you wash dishes, work in a diner, work in an office, as long as you're not an executive or professional, as for instance doctors, lawyers who require a degree, you're not exempt. Pretty much, if you get paid hourly rate, you're pretty much non-exempt.
Okay, and thank you. And where can the general public find some more factual information regarding the employees and employers' rights and responsibilities?
You can always go to our website, www.dol.gov, and we have plenty of information. If you want to know anything about the workforce, it is on our website. We also have fact sheets. So if you even Google exempt, you will come up with a fact sheet, and fact sheet number 17 will give you lots of information on what you need to know. So just go to our website, and you will find it there.
Is it the same? Do you think is the same universally, like from state to state, or it differs?
Well, the Federal Department of Labor, wherever you go, it is $7.25. No matter what state you go to, it's $7.25. But each state, I have learned, has their own minimum wage, and of course, it cannot be lower than the federal minimum wage. Some states, their federal minimum wage is $7.25. Some of them are higher.
Okay, thank you. And is there, to wrap this up, is there anything that you would like to educate or information that you'd like to leave with us that can be a vital educational piece for the public and for myself in terms of employees' rights and responsibilities?
Yes. You as an employee have a right to be paid and paid on time. You have as an employee have the right to be paid what you work. Like I said, fair days pay for a fair day's work. There's also one thing I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of. We also regulate Family Leave Medical Act. That is, if you are with an employer that has 50 or more employees, and you worked 1,250 hours the previous year, and you have an injury to yourself or to your family member, you are authorized 12 work weeks of protected leave. It is unpaid, by the way. Now you can use that in conjunction with your paid leave, but 12 weeks of protected leave to make sure that you take care of you and your family members.
Okay.
But you have a right. All you gotta do is just call us. You can every state has a Department of Labor hours and wage, so just call us and we'll take care of you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a general number, or it may be found on their website?
It's found on the website, because I think each state has a different number. I'm not gonna give you my office number because I don't want anybody calling me.
But of course, you can also find this information or link on www.articlemotion.com. And thank you for being here, Ms. Johnson. It's a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.